We're back. I'm Dave Donaldson. Welcome back to Crypt Tips. Crypt Tips? We're back. I'm Dave Donaldson and welcome back to Grip Tips. Today we're going to be talking about the Aputure Amaran P60c and the Aputure Amaran P60x. We'll start off by unboxing the P60x only, as the P60c essentially comes the exact same way, except it's a little larger than the X version. Opening it up for the first time, we get three things. First, this small round bag that holds a pop-up softbox, which we'll get to a little bit later. Then we have this egg crate for attaching to the front of that softbox. And last but not least is the soft briefcase, which is the fixture, the P60x, which right out of the gate we can see mounts for two Sony NPF style batteries. And I don't really have any of those batteries, but what I did learn is that not only will those batteries actually work with your light so that you can have a battery operated light, it'll actually charge those batteries as well. Then we have the front of the light, which is a staggered pattern of tungsten and daylight LEDs. Now, if we dive into the front of the kit, we'll find our power supply, IEC cable, and then the yoke for this light, which I'm going to be honest, I hate this style of yoke. I have had plenty of these in my career, and I've never really been a big fan of them. I will give it, though, to Aputure on this one because at least it's a metal version of one of these as opposed to the plastic ones that I've had in the past that I've hated with a fiery passion. Now, as I mentioned before, the P60c comes packed pretty much the exact same way that the X version does, but as you can see here, the brief and the light are a tad bigger, which makes sense considering they had to add the RGB WW chipset. Yes, RGB WW, which means this is essentially like a small Nova. Now, heading up the light, I would love to give you some good advice, and this is anything that has a threaded hole and a threaded rod. Before turning righty-tighty into a mount, turn lefty-loosey until the spud drops into the mounting hole, and then start screwing righty-tighty. This isn't just mounting lights, this is honestly just anything, this is just good practice in the sense of anything that has, you know, like a threaded hole and a threaded rod, always turn lefty-loosey before going righty-tighty. You're making this dirty. Now we can drop in our light into the mount, and something that I like to do after screwing the knob down onto the spud is that I like to take an extra quarter turn on the light itself so that the spud gets a little extra torque than just hand tightening. It's also worth noting that these lights have a couple of mounting holes on the sides as well. Then we can take our power cable and press that in, and as soon as you plug in the IEC cable, the light will automatically turn on, as studio mode on these lights comes enabled by default. But if you have that disabled, the power button is super responsive when striking these lights on with just the tap of a button. And in the first mode, we have the lighting mode, which is just a simple CCT mode where you can dial in the intensity of our light. And we can also see the power, Bluetooth, and estimated time that the light will stay on for, you know, depending if you have a battery on it or not. In addition to being able to dial our color from 3200 degrees all the way to 6500 degrees Kelvin. Now, if we tap our menu, we can change how the light behaves, such as the fan mode menu, where we have the ability to change the fan speed from smart to medium. Smart mode will let the light decide if the fan should be on, off, or change speed. Medium will leave the fan on at a consistent speed. Going back into our menu, we can go into studio mode, which I mentioned earlier. We'll turn the light on as soon as it senses power, or you can disable that if you want to make sure that you are manually turning the light on or off. That's my preferred way, so I always select no. We also have Bluetooth reset, which you need to tap yes so that the Bluetooth is enabled to now work with the Sidus app, just like all the other lights that Aputure makes. There's also the fixture serial number, language, firmware version, custom effects, which you'll need to use Sidus Link for. Currently, out of these three, only picker effects and music effects works. Touch bar effects is a feature that they are currently working on, but music effects is new to me, and to be honest, I'm not really entirely sure how it works. I'm still kind of playing with it. So far, I've tried to upload Nicki Minaj's WAP to this light, but I still don't know what I'm doing. There's some whores in this house! On top of custom effects, you also have some built-in standard effects such as fireworks, strobe, and pulsing. But now let's dip into the P60c, which pretty much has the exact same user interface as the X, but with a couple of more features. For instance, the light can range anywhere between 2500 degrees Kelvin and 7500. It also has the ability to control the green and magenta shift, which is really visible, and I can see it here while I turn the knob. So that was CCT mode, but now let's dip into HSI mode, which will give us all the colors of the wind. Being able to dial in hue based on a 360-degree color wheel, saturation, and intensity. We can also go into the effects mode, which gives us a few more options in addition to what the X version had, such as cop car, party lights, fire, farty bulb, farty bulb, farty bulb. Just wow. From there, we can also go back into our menu and also choose gels mode, which will let you decide on a particular gel to imitate along with either a 3200 or 5600 degree Kelvin source. Now backing out of that menu, we also have the ability to store presets with these numbered preset buttons for quick tuning in to our mainly used and desired looks. You can say add 3 commonly used color temperatures and add a 4th preset for an effect. All you have to do to set any preset is dial in a color temp or an effect, hold down the key that you'd like to assign to it, and the light will ask you if you'd like to save the preset. Select yes, and now you have created a hotkey for either that color temp or effect. Also, something the 60C has is frequency selection, where you can dial it anywhere between 18 and 20 kilohertz. So now that I've shown you what's possible with both of these lights and just kind of giving you a basic rundown of how to use both of them, let's take a meter reading. So the 60C acted the way that I expected, which was when I got to 2500 degrees Kelvin, it was at 1200 lux at about 2 meters away. And then as I dialed to 7500 degrees, the light got brighter and up to 1500 lux, which is pretty normal for a bicolor light on the daylight side. However, the X version actually output pretty consistently from 3200 degrees all the way to 6500 degrees Kelvin at 1500 lux. I don't know necessarily if that light was supposed to do that, but pretty much across the board, it stayed at about 1500 lux. Lastly, I didn't bother with measuring CRI, TLCI, SSI, because I feel like those scores, CRI and TLCI, are just old ways of measuring light, and SSI is when you're comparing it to something else that's tungsten or daylight based on your preferences. And so I don't think that those scores are really fair to even look at. So I've been looking at TM30-18 because that seems to be the one that will actually tell me if this is going to be a good light or not, because what it's doing is sampling 99 colors, and then it tells me what the fidelity score is and what the color gamut is. So, you know, how good is it with all of its colors and how saturated is it? So the P60C kind of varied from like 96 to 94 as far as fidelity goes, but then it ended up being 104 to 102 as far as color gamut was concerned. So it's a little bit saturated, but the score is pretty high as far as fidelity goes, which is great. Now that range was basically from starting from 2500 degrees and going up to 7500 degrees, which is why I said 96 to 94 and 104 to 102. So that's just kind of something to note, is that as you kind of go up into the daylight part of the spectrum, those scores start to drop. Also, something that I've kind of noticed with the P60C as well is that 7500 degrees Kelvin was not really that spot on. It was actually more like 6800. So kind of a 700 degree difference. However, on the X version, I ended up getting a 95 to 93 score as far as going from 3200 degrees Kelvin all the way to 6500 degrees. That was the fidelity. We're measuring meat now. I do have a tutorial coming out soon that's going to explain the Sekonic C800U, this guy. So if you're still confused about those numbers, what does that even mean? Those numbers, just like I showed in my last episode, basically the closer that they are to 100, the better it is. So the fact that you're kind of getting somewhere between 93 to a 96 kind of score is pretty damn good as far as fidelity goes. And then showing that it's just a little bit saturated, but only by a couple of points. If it was like 140, that would be ridiculous, right? Right. Now, as I mentioned, there are soft boxes that go with these lights, and that's what the little round bag is. It's basically like one of those collapsible pop-up soft boxes. And if you see here, we have the tent poles, which actually go together. These two pieces are held together with elastic. Snap those together on all four corners so that you get the actual box shape. Then if we look at the back of the light, we have these like 4 notches that kind of come out of the back of the light, and what you're going to do is take the elastic, go around that, and then push the back of the softbox in front of the light. You also will probably notice that there's a little bit of a light leak. Now, in addition to the softboxes, if you could see on the very front of it, there's actually these little Velcro strips that are on the outside, and if we take our egg crate portion of that came with the kit, there's also Velcro on the side of that. You basically just stick it up right onto the front of it, set it and forget it. That basically takes the beam angle to a 45-degree beam angle. You can see, just as I have it here, there used to be a lot of spill that's on the wall. This is cutting all of that down. So my overall opinion about this light is that if I was still a baller on a budget, and technically I kind of am always a baller on a budget, but if I was just getting started again and I didn't want to go the Canon light route, I wanted to have effects, I wanted to have, you know, the possibility to have battery powered and etc. Yeah, this is a great light. This is actually just one of these is less expensive than the poor man's Nova that I showed before. If you remember, I took 7 B7Cs and stuck them inside of a 7 light plug. Sure, we're going to say plug. I stuck 7 of those inside of that with a softbox, and that entire kit to put together was kind of like, you got to buy the B7Cs and the softbox, is somewhere around $700 to $800, where you could pay $350, get more output, smaller package, and have a softbox, and you don't have necessarily a poor man's Nova. You have kind of not the Nova, not a poor man's Nova. You got a middleman's Nova. So I think that the price point for it at $350 is totally worth it. There are things that I don't like. I don't like the yoke. I don't like the actual softbox, but it is supposed to be a budget-friendly light, and I got to keep that in mind. But sadly, that is all that I have for you guys today. If you like today's episode, please let me know in the comment section below. You could also follow me on Twitter, right there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. I hope they make a 90-watt version of the 60X. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? The name of it? P90X. I'll see myself out. It's okay.